With the war against the zombies raging on in northern Africa, things seemed bleak for Sierra Leone, as with the overtaking of Liberia, their front had shifted to a point where they could no longer hold. Questions were raised amongst the public about using nuclear bombs to get rid of the threat, but the UN was strongly against this. There were still many citizens evacuating from Africa, and nuclear warfare should only be the most desperate final solution. Where some expected Israel to be infected within the next 2 months, it seemed like Mubarak, though an increase of his infected population did occur, was able to maintain the spread within his borders. The spreading had reached Cairo, creating panic and fear amongst the citizens. Instead of northeast towards Israel, it went south to countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Mexico, an increase of troop training was noted as well. The foreign threats lay at the bottom of the reasoning behind this decision, but President Diego Fernandez de Ceballos also said that it would benefit control and security within its own country. Cartel violence was increasing in multiple cities, and the extra funding reserved for military and security forces would hopefully calm things down a bit. Gaddafi was performing similar moves as an increased focus of his army gave him a false sense of security. He believed the army could save him if the zombie horde arrived at his borders, but the fact that the infection itself was still spreading among some citizens should not be overlooked. On September 7, the zombie horde had entered Benin to the east. Benin was a small country with barely any military power. It would not take long before this was overtaken as well. The majority of the people fled towards the docks in desperate hopes to escape via sea, but the deceitful currents made this basically suicide. A mere 2 days later, Burkina Faso was lost, and word had gotten out that the zombies attacked the border region of Niger. Some people hoped that Mali and Niger would be big enough to stop the horde, for if not, the zombies would gain an enormous amount of terrain and numbers to their horde. Then on September 11th, the States had stated that the World Trade Center in New York City was attacked. 19 hijackers with ties to the Al-Qaeda network attacked and captured 4 different planes in the morning of September 11th. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines a bipartisan political conflict with the Republicans. In New York City, the Republicans under Rudy Giuliani and the Democrats under Hillary Clinton had already worked together successfully to fight back against the catastrophe. Senator Clinton had now held a decisive speech about American national unity in the face of the terror attacks. It seemed that the two parties would work together in the aftermath of the crisis, just this once. On September 14th, an American National Prayer Service was held at Washington National Cathedral in an attempt to give the United States a short rest after the constant turmoil of the last 3 days. President George W. Bush held the main speech of the event, proclaiming, "Just 3 days removed from these events, Americans do not yet have the distance of history. But our responsibility to history is already clear, to answer these attacks and rid the world of evil." Bush made it clear that the real threat bared its teeth in the form of terrorism in the Middle East. Where the zombies were a slow-moving horde on a different continent, the Al-Qaeda terrorists had the capability of hurting the people of America in their own homeland. They were the real urgent threat. They should be dealt with now, before a similar scenario would repeat itself. All of the world stood with America, but Africa stood alone. No one heard the outcries as Sierra Leone fell. Citizens believed that the zombie outbreak was serious, but due to them being slow and only consisting of walkers, that it was not as serious as the terrorists who had bombs, guns, and other weapons at their disposal. For now, everyone's focus lay towards the Middle East. In the wake of the terrorist attacks on September 11th, violence against various ethnic and religious groups had skyrocketed in the United States. Babir Singh Sodhi, a sheikh born in India and the owner of a gas station in Arizona, was, on September 15th, brutally ambushed and murdered without provocation by Frank Silva Boak, a 42-year-old self-proclaimed American patriot, who would then go on to attempt to murder several other people of either Lebanese or Afghan descent. A week after the attacks of September 11th, the FBI released information about the Anthrax case, a series of assassination attempts using letters infected with anthrax spores that began on September 18th. The recipients of the letters included the U.S. Senate Majority Leader Tom Ashe and Vermont Senator Patrick Leahy. 5 people had been killed. The FBI had not published information about any potential suspects yet. That same day, the most eastern group of the zombie horde had made its way straight through Benin, cutting off the civilians who were still in the north and now stuck. By heading through the middle, they arrived earlier at Nigeria's borders than expected, and through a small opening, the zombies managed to find their way into Nigeria as well. Then, on September 20th of 2001, George W. Bush held what might be the most defining speech of the post-9/11 effort yet. He talked about internal and foreign policy and made a declaration of "for us or against us" by exclaiming the following: "Every nation, in every region, now has a decision to make. Either you are with us, or you are with terrorism. From this day forward, any nation that continues to harbor or support terrorism will be regarded by the United States as a hostile regime." By the time the speech was held, Benin had fallen. But it was not just America whose policy had changed. Al-Qaeda had mentioned to plan more attacks not just in America, but Europe as well. The fear that something like the September 11 attacks could happen to any Western country held the citizens in their grip. President Jacques Chirac set out its country's most political focus yet, as with an armament industry, the buildup of military factories could be increased greatly. British Prime Minister Tony Blair assured Bush that America could count on Britain. With the long military path starting back at the beginning of 2000, Britain was more than ready and capable. Holland also responded in the form of a political focus shifting to international policies. Prime Minister Wim Kok told that they would increase the production of motorized vehicles again, especially as the production at the moment could not keep up with the demand of the military setting up their divisions. The increase did push Holland's oil supplies to its limits, and if another increase would occur, new trading plans needed to be made. Germany headed into the same direction as France by strengthening the bond between the two countries. Chancellor Schröder and President Chirac met on several occasions to talk about military necessities for both the terrorist and zombie threat. Europe, in a certain sense, was a bit more sober on the matter regarding the zombies than America was, but then again, it was America's heart that had been struck. After Guinea had fallen, the zombie horde moved further west along the coast. In a way, it mimicked the original route that the virus had traversed back in 2000. Though President George W. Bush realized that the development of weapons was important, the current priority was to bring the country together again. Bush wanted to strengthen the national morale. He, and many other members of his party, knew that though the Americans may be very shaken up first, it would only be a matter of time before they got themselves together, and their resolve would be stronger than ever. For example, the amount of people volunteering for the army rose an astonishing amount. He capitalized on that notion by strengthening his own political power, military power, and stability of the country. In Mali, the same thing occurred as in Benin, where part of the zombie horde cut off large chunks of land. The people on the western part of the country found themselves soon surrounded. Just like with Nigeria, the zombies forced their way into Mauritania with this forward group. Then in the first week of October, Bush informed the US Congress that on October 7th, a military invasion of the Taliban-ruled Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan would begin. The American military attack was to carry the title Operation Enduring Freedom. Due to the military preparation in the months before with the zombie horde in mind, the US was able to conjure an invasion forces quickly. The president also announced his intentions to somehow involve the Allied nations in the war effort. The government of Afghanistan had already issued a declaration of protest, but as no major nation on Earth actually had political relations with Afghanistan, it was unlikely to have an effect.